What is going on, investors? Hopefully you guys are having a great week out there. Time to talk about FuelCell Energy. This is a stock that I get asked a lot of questions about here on the channel. So we'll talk about it because it just reported earnings this morning. And initially the stock was actually off by quite a bit, sold off about 7%. Plug Power kind of followed it as well. After having a pretty down day yesterday, Plug Power followed through, pre-market down 6%. But guess what? These stocks have a lot of momentum behind them and they are actually up for the day. FuelCell Energy at the current moment up about 2%. That's following over the last year. This stock is up 600%. Holy cow. Now, Plug Power also reversed losses in the pre-market. Now this stock is up just fractionally in the regular session off its all-time highs of about $69. This stock is up 1,400% over the last year. We'll talk generally about a little bit of the news that both of these companies have been making. I also want to talk about just oil in general. I think that's just to give you a little bit different perspective than you might be hearing out there. We'll jump into the earnings and the numbers over at FuelCell. Spoiler alert, they're not that great. Honestly, this company generates basically negative money from their business. They're basically giving their product away at a loss. We'll talk about that, whether or not that's a good investing strategy or something that's sustainable in the long term. And then finally, we'll jump over to the stock chart for FuelCell. Man, this stock's been on a monster ride, but boy, it's been a lot higher in the past. So we'll take a look just broadly, and then we'll drill down into kind of a more refined view, and we'll take a look at that. We'll also talk a little bit about Plug Power here, but we'll talk more about Plug Power when they report earnings. It looked like March 4th was when I'm seeing that they'll report earnings. So we'll talk about more about Plug Power at that time as well. So FuelCell Energy got a $5.3 billion market cap. Retail investors in particular have really been bidding this up. Also, since the election was basically finalized, we've seen these stocks run up. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Now, the stock initially fell about 7% this morning. They did have revenues rise about 54% year over year. So investors love increasing revenues. So we'll talk about that when we jump into the numbers. Now, Plug Power also kind of in this same space. They're both kind of competing, or they're both kind of in the same space. Plug Power, though, has got a $27 billion market cap. Now, Plug Power just fell after Kerrisdale revealed a short idea calling it full sell euphoria. So they talked about how there's a lot of retail investors. I have a lot of comments on my channel saying people got Plug Power as a free stock. So they signed up for Robinhood under a referral code and they got Plug Power as a free stock. So whether or not that's a sustainable way to pick stocks, you got for free and now it's up and you've kind of fallen in love. Whether or not that's something you can repeat year after year, time after time, I don't know. But this short seller probably makes a little bit of point. But keep in mind that they shorted 200 million shares of Plug Power. So he certainly wasn't going to go on and write love notes to Plug Power after shorting the stock. But here's just something more broadly. Before we get the numbers with FuelCell, what I want to talk to you about is, so TC Energy cuts 1,000 jobs as the Keystone XL pipeline stops. So if you weren't aware, President Biden got inaugurated yesterday. One of the first things he did was stop the Keystone XL pipeline, which is essentially just a pipeline to move oil, I think, from Canada down to the Gulf, where the price is a little bit more. So it's just capturing the spread. So that oil is still going to move. Believe it or not, it's still going to go. It's going to go by either tanker truck or by a rail. And so it's just not going to go by XL. So, whether or not this has an impact on Plug Power or FuelCell, I don't know. But what's this going to do? It's going to drive up the cost of oil. Okay. It's going to drive up the cost. And that typically is actually good for these energy companies. And not only that, they're cutting 1,000 jobs. What does that do? Save them on costs. So here's another thing on the Keystone pipeline. Then we'll jump into the numbers. It looks like this could just end interstate oil pipelines, at least for the next 4 to 8 years, however long the Biden administration lasts or Democratic administration lasts. It probably will just end the building of these interstate pipelines. And guess what that's going to do? Drive up the cost of oil. And so for me personally, I think that's where some of the low-hanging fruit is actually oil, traditional oil companies. I know that's not something that a lot of people are out there talking about. They're talking about Tesla and alternative fuels, but I actually think traditional oil, spoiler alert, my Mercedes outside takes oil. My other car, BMW, takes oil. Everybody I know, except for a couple people in my family, drive traditional gasoline cars. Guess what? Oil is not going to go away. And if you eliminate pipelines, the price is going to go up, and chances are the profits are going to go up with these traditional oil companies. So not a take that you're probably hearing a lot these days. Now, what you are hearing a lot about are these alternative fuel cell energies. And look, there should be a lot to be excited about. Take a look at this revenue growth. We've got total revenues here. This is fuel cell for the last 3 months, and these look to be in thousands. So this is 5 million. So we went from 11 million up to 17 million. Again, not a bit. Actually, I think I would expect a larger growth from this when you factor in that the stock is up 600%. I'd actually expect revenues to go up a little bit higher than this, but their service and license revenue appears to be the big winner. We went from 752 all the way up to 5.4. So that's a big jump, and I think investors are obviously anticipating that to continue. Now, here's the problem with this company is on product, they made $0, but they spent 2.4 million. So they lost 2.4 million right there. On service and license, we talked about how they made 5.4, but they spent 8.1. On generation, they made 5.1, but they spent 10.3. Okay, if your daughter or son or daughter had a lemonade stand out front and they came in and said, Dad, I made $5 on my lemonade stand, but I spent $10 on the whole stand, you probably want to give them a lesson about how that might not be a sustainable business model, but this is the stock market and wacky things are happening. Now, on advanced technology, we spent 4.2 and actually made a little bit of money since we made 6.4. So we spent 25 million to make 17. Now that is down from the previous year. So you do like to see that our revenues went up and our cost of those revenues actually went down. This business is obviously still in scaling up mode. Now that's not the full story. Here's our other operating expenses. Okay, we got employees, we got other people to pay. That went from 9.6 to 9. So actually that is a positive trend. They've flattened that out, it appears, while they've been able to grow revenues and shrink costs. So that is what has investors excited. I think this is what has investors falling behind this stock. Let's jump over to the stock chart and just take broadly. Sometimes I just like to look at kind of a max chart, and that's kind of what we got here, a weekly view. And you see here, the stock was basically on life support, and it's ticked up. It's up a lot, but more broadly, this stock has lots of bag holders if they've been holding the bag for a while. Now, on a more shorter time frame here's just over the last couple months or so. This stock has channeled up, consolidated sideways, channeled up, consolidated sideways. We've channeled up, and it appears we're consolidating sideways as well. Any of these sideways consolidation has proven to be a buying opportunity for FuelCell, not well, you could sell if you bought down in here and you wanted to sell on one of these sideways consolidation moves. Sure, that's something you can do, but this stock is just making just this kind of classic pennant formation every couple months. It makes this, it consolidates, and then boom, it moves to the upside. Now, could that reverse at some point? Could it consolidate like this and then move to the downside? Absolutely, that is something that could happen. But over the last couple months, it has done basically the exact same thing. It's channeled up, made a pennant formation, and boom, popped to the upside. Okay, it's done that literally 3 times in a row. So do you want to play that trend? It's potentially something that you can do. And the stock did show strength today after reporting earnings, initially being down 7%. Now I'm seeing this stock is up 4%. A lot of retail momentum. From a fundamental basis, this stock doesn't make sense. So it's not a stock for me. I have a system in place that I like to follow with companies. They need to be profitable, at least or close to profitable from a gross margin perspective. I don't think this company is there. And then when we look at kind of an operating profit, they're not even close there. They lost $17 million. And that does compare a little bit favorably to the previous period. And on top of that, I think there's probably more value in these energy names, which are down huge over the last year or so. And definitely people have been kind of throwing these on the wayside after President Biden was inaugurated. They think big oil is going to go out the wayside. I don't think so. I actually think oil is going to skyrocket under the Biden administration, and that is going to mean massive, massive profits to traditional oil stocks. Now, same thing could happen with FuelCell. We'll see what happens. Leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear what you have to think about this one. We'll talk about them and Plug Power going forward. Again, Plug Power reports on March 4th. We'll cover them at that time. Thanks for tuning in today. Good luck with your investments.